A homeless girl secretly lives in the garage of a millionaire's mansion, but when she first appears, she screams at him that, "Make sure someone deep cleans the house, darling. I can't stand rats, roaches, or squatters." The woman's voice crackled through the quiet, like polished glass snapping under pressure. It was sharp, rehearsed, sweetened at the tip, but dipped in vinegar. Lucy flinched before she understood the words. She didn't know what squatters meant, not precisely. But the way the woman said it, low, conspiratorial, like she was warning someone about a mold in the walls, was enough to send a chill into Lucy's spine. From beneath the attic paneling of the detached garage, Lucy Carter, 6 years old, barefoot, unknown to the world, watched the black SUV roll up the gravel path like something that didn't belong to the forest or the earth. Its tires kicked up a slow cloud that drifted across the weeds like fog. She didn't move, not even when the passenger door clicked open. A woman in white stepped out first, hair done, heels inappropriate for grass, but she didn't seem to care. She walked toward the house with her chin up, looking as if she had never once needed to knock. "I love it," she said loudly, gesturing toward the house's sloping eaves and ivy-wrapped chimney. "So charming. Imagine how cute it'll look after we gut the insides and open up that awful kitchen." Lucy shifted slightly in her space, careful not to let the old screws groan. Through a sliver in the slats, she could make out the man stepping out of the car now. Older than the woman. Slower. Not as neatly pressed. He wore a sweater that looked too warm for the weather and kept his eyes on the cracked porch tiles as if they were all that remained of something he once trusted. He didn't respond to the woman's enthusiasm. Just a slow, almost invisible nod. From inside the garage, the smell of motor oil and rust surrounded Lucy like old friends. She turned her eyes from the window, crept back a few feet, and began adjusting her makeshift bedding, a bundle of worn towels tucked between two tool cabinets. Her hand brushed the old cookie tin she kept sealed with elastic bands. She pressed her palm over it. As long as that stayed hidden, she still had time. She whispered to herself, "I'll leave tomorrow." Tomorrow for sure. Outside, the woman, Veronica, was pointing at the porch railing. "We can wrap fairy lights all along here for the wedding. Rustic but elegant, right?" The man, Ethan, though Lucy wouldn't learn his name until much later, shrugged. His voice was soft, nearly swallowed by the wind. "Sure, if that's what you want." Something about his tone made Lucy pause. It wasn't what she expected from a man rich enough to own a house this big and forget it for 2 years. There was no command in his voice, no certainty, just absence. Night arrived like a drawn curtain. The crickets started their chorus. Somewhere in the kitchen, a light flicked on. Lucy could see it glowing through the trees. She didn't eat that day. There wasn't time to sneak in and back out while the house was full of people. She drank from the garden hose behind the tool shed and folded herself into her blanket nest as if that could make her invisible. But just past midnight, a noise woke her. It wasn't loud, just the soft click of a door latch followed by a breath of music. She knew that sound. Sliding carefully from her corner, she tiptoed barefoot across the garage's creaky boards and climbed up onto the shelving near the wall's cracked edge. There, through the splintered gap in the boards, she saw the car, the red one, still dusty, still not moved, and inside it, the man. He sat in the driver's seat of the Mustang, like someone might sit in a pew, staring ahead, hands in his lap, still and devout. The radio played faintly, an old jazz standard that Lucy didn't know the name of, but she recognized the sound. The kind of music people always played in black and white movies before someone left, or died, or kissed the wrong person. He didn't move. Lucy didn't either. The longer she watched, the more it felt like the distance between them wasn't a secret. That maybe, somehow, he knew there was a shadow just outside his field of view. That maybe He wanted it there. She leaned forward, resting her chin against the wood. He was nothing like the men she avoided at night in bus terminals and behind liquor stores. He didn't fidget. He didn't swear. He didn't reach for bottles or shout at no one. He just sat in that car like he was trying to remember how to breathe. And somehow, for the first time since her mother vanished into a firelit night, Lucy didn't feel alone. The headlights were off. The house behind him was quiet. A moth fluttered against the window. The music faded into silence. Eventually, he opened the door and stepped out, moving slowly, like gravity was a little stronger under his feet. He paused before locking the car, placed one hand on the hood, and stayed like that for a moment, eyes closed, lips barely moving. Lucy didn't know what he was saying, but she mouthed something too, just in case. The sky was low that afternoon, like it hadn't decided yet whether to rain or just stay tired. Rosa Hart wiped the dust from the foyer's windowsill with a steady hand, her movements more habitual than purposeful. She didn't hum when she worked, hadn't in years, but she always carried the faintest scent of lavender soap, the kind that clung to her apron even after the third rinse. Behind her, the heavy footsteps came to a stop. "You didn't have to come out today," Ethan said, "and leave her to pick out curtains without supervision." Rosa turned just enough to look over her shoulder. "Don't be silly." Ethan let out a breath that might have been half a chuckle. "Veronica says she wants to make the place feel like home." "She said that last time," Rosa replied, "and the time before that, it was the lake house." There was a pause. Ethan looked at the stairs, then back to the front door, as if unsure which way to disappear toward. "She likes it out here," he finally said. Rosa's cloth stopped mid-wipe. "This house hasn't had a soul in 5 years, Ethan. Not since you left it locked with your grief." He didn't respond. From the garage loft, Lucy could hear the whole exchange through the vent above the cabinets. Not all the words, but enough of the shape of them. She recognized the woman's tone, not cruel, just old, like a chair that creaked only when someone honest sat in it. She knew who Rosa was. The housekeeper has been looking after this place all this time. The woman's voice didn't have the sharpness that Veronica's did. It was tired in a different way, familiar in a way Lucy couldn't place. That evening, the red car glistened slightly in the moonlight, even though no one had washed it. Lucy had started tracking Ethan's routines like a game. 9:15 p.m., garage light flickers on. 9:20, he opens the Mustang's door. 9:23, music plays. Always soft, always old. She'd grown to expect the rhythm of it. But tonight, something in the rhythm shifted. Ethan sat in the car longer before turning on the music. The garage was silent. Lucy pressed her cheek against the wood slat, trying to angle her eye through the crack just right. Inside the car, Ethan rested his hands on the wheel. He didn't look at anything. Just sat there. When he finally reached forward to push the button on the old stereo, it wasn't jazz that played, but a voicemail greeting. A woman's voice crackled through. "Hey, leave a message. Or don't. I'm probably out in the garden again anyway." He shut it off so fast Lucy flinched. For several seconds, he just stared at the dashboard. Then he leaned forward, folded himself over the wheel, and stayed that way. Lucy couldn't see his face, but she could see his shoulders. And when they shook, she knew he wasn't just tired. She had seen grown men cry before, some loud, some angry, but never like this, never so still, never so quiet. She didn't know what to call the feeling that rose up in her chest, but it wasn't pity. It was closer to loneliness, recognizing its reflection. Downstairs, the kitchen door creaked. Lucy froze. She climbed down from the shelf with the silence of someone who had practiced hiding far more than speaking. She slipped past the garage's rear exit and into the bushes that ran along the side of the house. Through the kitchen window, light spilled like syrup across the floor tiles. Veronica stood near the sink, back to the room, phone pressed to her ear. Her posture changed when she thought no one was watching. Less refined, more real. "I told you," she hissed quietly. He's still sleepwalking through grief. He barely even asks questions. A pause. "No, not yet. But he'll add me to the trust right before the wedding. They always do." Lucy's breath caught, but she didn't dare move. "Don't rush me," Veronica said again, more forcefully this time. "You'll get your piece after the ceremony, once everything's final." She clicked the phone off and leaned on the counter, muttering something Lucy couldn't hear. The girl slid back into the dark. That night, she didn't return to the garage immediately. She lingered behind the tool shed, letting the cold soak into her bare feet. Her thoughts twisted and tumbled in her chest like old laundry, frayed, overlapping, knotted. At 11:47, the engine of a motorcycle cracked through the night. Lucy ducked instinctively. A tall man in a leather jacket got off the bike. He didn't knock. Veronica opened the side door before he could even reach for the handle. They stepped just outside the glow of the porch light. Lucy crawled on hands and knees to the base of the hedge, the cold biting through her palms. She couldn't hear everything, only fragments. Timing matters. Nothing flashy. He loves that car. It's perfect. The man, Mark, shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. Brake lines are easy. It's quiet. He won't even know until it's done. Lucy's lungs locked. The moment stretched long enough to feel like a verdict. Veronica nodded. Do it the night before. He'll want to drive it after the ceremony for that whole sentimental effect. Mark smirked. You'll be rich. I'll be gone. The door shut behind them. Lucy remained still for a long time. The hedges swayed around her. A raccoon scrabbled past, but she didn't flinch. Only when the porch light clicked off did she move again. Back inside the garage, Lucy curled up beneath the workbench and pressed her fingers to her temples. She didn't cry, but her hands were shaking. And somewhere, between fear and fury, a new thought surfaced, clearer than the others. She had to do something. The morning air was the kind that carried silence in it. Not emptiness, but something quieter than peace, like the breath before a confession. Rosa Hart stood at the edge of the kitchen garden, snipping the last of the basil before the clouds could roll in. She wore her usual cardigan, sleeves pushed back, and muttered to herself about rain that hadn't yet arrived. From the back porch, Ethan watched her, mug in hand. No tie today, just that worn navy sweater she had once patched at the shoulder when grief made him careless with cigarettes. She's up early, Ethan said, nodding toward the gravel path where Veronica paced on the phone, her heels biting into the damp dirt. Rosa didn't look up. Brides usually are, she replied. Too early to be planning flowers, Ethan murmured, more to himself. She's not talking about flowers. He glanced over. Rosa met his eyes just long enough to let him know she wasn't guessing. Inside the garage, Lucy hadn't slept. Her hands had stopped trembling sometime after midnight, but her chest still carried the weight of what she'd heard, and what she hadn't stopped. She crouched behind the oil drum, knees to chest, watching the slant of sunlight creep across the Mustang's chrome bumper. The car had always seemed untouchable, like a photograph from someone else's life, but now it looked different, fragile even. At 9:02, Robert pulled up. Mid-50s, worn hands. No nonsense. He carried a small toolbox, waved once to Ethan through the window, then walked straight to the garage. Lucy watched him through the crack in the wall as he wiped his boots before stepping in. Ethan joined him 5 minutes later. I want it ready for this afternoon, he said, gesturing to the Mustang. Veronica's insisted. Something about photos before the ceremony. Robert nodded. Won't take long. Already gave it a full tune-up last month, but I'll run through everything again. Lucy's stomach twisted. Her fingers dug into the floor. Robert knelt beside the car, began opening panels. Outside, Veronica's voice rang louder. Ethan, are you almost ready? She stepped into view, crimson dress catching the light like a warning flare. Ethan looked at her and said nothing. He just gave Robert a small nod, then turned toward the garage. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. Robert, adjusting the inspection mirror, paused. Car's in good shape, he said without looking up, though someone's been near the brake lines, fresh markings on the bolts. Ethan froze mid-step. What kind of markings? The kind you don't leave by accident. Veronica's heels clicked closer. Darling, she sang, they're waiting out front. Come on, I want at least one photo where we look like a normal couple. Lucy could see Ethan's hand tighten around the keyring. Then, something broke the silence. Soft, but ragged. A sob. It tore out of Lucy's throat before she knew it had begun. She stumbled from behind the drum, eyes red, chest heaving. Don't get in the car, she cried. Please don't, she told him to. She said, after the wedding, he wouldn't wake up. The brakes are cut. Veronica went still. Her eyes widened for just a second, and then, as though on cue, she gasped, staggered back, and clutched her chest like a schoolgirl in a melodrama. Oh my God, she whispered. What is that child even doing here? Ethan turned to Lucy, his face unreadable, not angry, not confused, just stunned. Robert rose slowly, walked to the front of the car, and crouched beside the tire again. He ran his hand along the line, tugged gently at the coupling, then stood. There's a cut, he said. Clean. Sharp. His voice was steady, but his mouth had gone dry. Someone meant for this to fail. Veronica dropped to the ground. Rosa came running from the house, dish towel still in her hand. She reached Lucy first, wrapping an arm around the girl's shoulder. Lucy didn't push her away. Ethan knelt down, not near Veronica, near Lucy. Who told you? He asked softly. Where did you hear that? She said it, Lucy mumbled, pointing behind her. And the man on the motorcycle. They were behind the house. Last night, she told him to do it. Robert didn't move. Rosa stood slowly and called someone. Lucy didn't hear the words. A few minutes later, sirens cut through the quiet. Veronica was still on the ground, breathing heavily, but with suspicious precision. When the police car pulled into the driveway, she tried to stand. Rosa didn't let her. Lucy felt Ethan's hand on her shoulder, warm but shaking. It's okay, he said, but it wasn't. Not really. The moment held too much. As Officer Harris stepped out of the cruiser, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp under a furrowed brow, Lucy didn't flinch. She didn't run. She didn't hide. For the first time in years, she stood in plain sight, trembling, but unhidden. Harris took one look at Veronica, then turned to Ethan. We received a call about tampering with a vehicle. Potential intent to harm. This the one? Ethan nodded once, said nothing. Veronica opened her mouth, but no words came out. Lucy just stared at the red car, gleaming in the morning light. She didn't know how long she'd be allowed to stay. She didn't know if she'd be punished for living in a garage, for stealing bread, for lying low. But none of that mattered now. She had done something. She had stopped it. That had to count for something. Detective Samuel Harris didn't wear his authority like a badge. He wore it like a wool coat, quiet, heavy, and more about weathering storms than proving something. He stepped toward Lucy with a calm that didn't press. His hand stayed by his sides, eyes low to meet hers without looming. When he spoke, it was as if he were addressing a frightened kitten trapped behind a washing machine. Miss, he said, voice low, warm in tone but cool in rhythm. "Can I sit here with you for a bit?" Lucy's head gave the faintest nod, more twitch than gesture. They sat together on the edge of the stone path near the garage, where oil stains had long since turned the gravel black. "You don't have to say anything," Harris added. "You've done a lot already." Lucy's hands sat clenched in her lap. The skin on her knuckles had gone white. "I didn't want him to die," she whispered. "I know," Harris said. "I didn't do anything wrong. Right?" "No," he said. "You did something very right." Behind them, the other officers began moving, photographing the Mustang, inspecting the brake line, placing yellow cones that looked too bright against the weathered driveway. Veronica stood not far off, arms crossed tight to her chest. Her red dress now looked like it belonged to another version of her, the one who smiled too brightly for photographs and gestured with manicured fingers like she was auditioning for something. But now, the smile was gone. Her mouth was pulled into a flat line, the color in her cheeks blotchy and inconsistent. She stepped forward, trying to reach Ethan, who hadn't moved from the lawn. "This is a mistake," she said, voice trembling with something between shock and rehearsed panic. "Ethan, please, this isn't... I would never..." Robert cleared his throat sharply, holding up a printout. Garage cam footage. She was in there after midnight. Veronica's face contorted, snapping toward him. "That doesn't prove anything. I was looking for a box of photo props." "Why'd you pull the battery from the dash cam then?" Robert asked, folding the printout back into its folder. "That's not how you find hats." Veronica's gaze snapped to Ethan again, desperate now. "Please," she said. "You don't believe this child, do you? She's a squatter. She's probably unwell. It's delusion, or trauma, or both." Ethan didn't answer. He was staring at Lucy. His lips had parted slightly, as if he were trying to speak, but couldn't find the thread to pull the words through. "How long have you been living here?" Harris asked Lucy gently. 2 years, she murmured. "Maybe a bit more." Ethan turned away. He walked toward the edge of the yard where the hydrangeas had started to bloom. The movement felt sudden, almost involuntary, like the body was trying to escape something the heart hadn't processed yet. Rosa followed him. No questions, no demands, just a quiet presence beside his shadow. "I didn't see her," Ethan said, voice soft, strangled. "How could I not see her?" Rosa didn't answer right away. She looked toward the garage, then back at the house. Her eyes carried the burden of someone who'd once made a choice and had to live with it. "I knew," she said finally. Ethan turned. "She's been here since the fall you stopped coming," Rosa continued. "She never made trouble. Took just enough to stay alive. So I left out food, bandages. Didn't tell you." "Why?" he asked, not angry, not betrayed, just hollow. "Because she didn't look at me like a child," Rosa said. "She looked at me like a hunted thing. And I've known that look. I couldn't take it away from her twice." Veronica let out a brittle laugh. "This is insane." She turned to Harris, hands held out, trembling more from fury than fear. "You can't arrest me. On what? A kid's fairy tale and a mechanic's guess." "I've got motive, opportunity, and tampered evidence," Harris said, stepping toward her. "And this," he raised a sealed evidence bag. "A life insurance policy dated last month. Beneficiary, Veronica Blake. Payout, $8 million. Her face drained, and then the handcuffs clicked, loud as thunder in the morning air. "You're making a mistake," she spat. "Ethan, look at me. This is humiliating. I gave up everything to be with you." Ethan didn't flinch. "I don't think you ever gave anything up," he said, "except your mask." As Harris led her away, Lucy stood slowly. She was holding something, tight to her chest, a worn paper box, edges soft with time. Harris paused when he saw it. "I found it," Lucy said. "A while ago, in a drawer under the stairs. I think it was for me." Harris nodded. "Can I look?" She handed it over. Inside were photocopies of old forms, photographs, and handwritten notes, some in a careful adult hand, others scribbled in Lucy's childlike print. Names, numbers. A single photograph of a woman with tired eyes and a date circled in red. "My mum," Lucy said. "She died when I was little. That's all I know. She said if anything happened, I should keep the box safe." Ethan knelt beside her. He didn't touch her. He just looked at the girl, at the box, at the fragile bridge forming between the two. From the driveway, a different car pulled in, smaller, silver, with state plates. Two people stepped out, a woman with tight curls and a notepad, and a man in a navy windbreaker. "Social services," Rosa said quietly. "They'll ask questions." Lucy's shoulders tensed, but Ethan stood first, walked over, extended a hand. "Let her stay here," he said, "at least until the paperwork's sorted." The woman raised an eyebrow. "You're not family." "I'm not letting her go to another shelter," he said. "She's been alone long enough." They looked at Lucy. She didn't say anything, but she stepped behind Ethan, just slightly. Enough. Later that evening, Rosa helped Lucy carry a folded blanket into the room across the hall from Ethan's, the one no one had touched in years. Rosa tucked the corners in tight, her hands practiced, gentle. "This used to be her room," she said softly. "Mrs. Grayson's. She liked lavender." Lucy looked around. The window was cracked open. A soft breeze stirred the curtains. Rosa paused at the doorway, then turned back. "I knew about you," she said. Lucy blinked. "I saw your footprints by the shed one morning. Found crumbs in the pantry arranged just so. You were careful, but not invisible." "Why didn't you tell?" Lucy whispered. Rosa smiled, tired, kind, with something old and sacred behind her eyes. "Because sometimes we don't shout when we see pain. We wait for it to speak." She reached out, smoothed a curl behind Lucy's ear. "From now on," Rosa said, "this room is yours." Lucy didn't speak. She just sat on the bed, and for the first time in 2 years, let herself lean back into a pillow that didn't smell like engine grease. The wind picked up just before midnight, rustling the lavender bush beneath the window like someone flipping pages in a book. Lucy sat on the edge of the bed, her legs tucked under her, staring at the cardboard box on the nightstand. She hadn't opened it in weeks, not since before the cold nights came, when the roof still leaked near the rafters, and she'd had to sleep with a pan beside her head to catch the dripping. Now, inside a room that smelled like fresh linen and wood polish, the box seemed both heavier and lighter at once. She reached for it slowly, like a ritual. One by one, she laid out its contents on the bed, the insurance letter folded so often it had creases like tree bark. A grocery receipt with her mother's scribbled note on the back. "Keep this. It matters." A faded photo of her and a woman with tired eyes, arms tight around each other. A small notebook with uneven handwriting, half filled with things Lucy couldn't understand, and things she wished she didn't. She smoothed them out like puzzle pieces, but no picture formed. Outside the door, footsteps. They stopped. Ethan didn't knock, just stood there. She could feel it, the weight of someone wanting to help, but not knowing how to enter. He didn't speak. A few seconds passed, then the gentle click of ceramic against wood. He had left a mug on the desk, steam curling up like a whisper. Lucy didn't move until his footsteps faded. Then she picked up the mug with both hands, cradling it like it might vanish. The milk was warm, slightly sweet, not too full, just enough. She sipped slowly. The warmth traveled down her throat, like something older than comfort. She didn't know why it made her eyes sting. No one had ever given her something without asking for it back. She placed the mug back on the desk, adjusted the items on the bed once more, then folded the box closed, tucked it beneath the pillow, not to hide it, just to keep it close. Sleep didn't come easily. When it finally did, it came wrong. She was in the garage again, crouched behind the oil drum. The Mustang engine roared to life without her. She screamed, but no sound came. She ran, but her feet slipped on oil. Then the crash, metal against something soft and terrible. Veronica's voice shrieked in her ear, "No one's going to believe a rat like you." She woke with a gasp. The room was dark, but she could feel the walls, real, soft, dry. The air didn't smell like gasoline, the sheets didn't scratch. She wasn't underground, she wasn't alone. Rosa came in quietly, her voice soft as cotton. "Shh, you're all right. Just a dream." Lucy couldn't speak. Her chest heaved. Tears stung, but she blinked them back. Rosa didn't rush. She sat at the edge of the bed and rubbed circles into the child's back with the heel of her palm. Not the way a nurse might, but the way a grandmother would. Steady, without agenda. Minutes passed like that. Ethan appeared in the doorway. "Bad dream?" he asked gently. Lucy nodded once. Ethan stepped inside. He didn't come too close. "I used to have them too," he said, "for a long time." "Did they go away?" she asked, voice small. "No," he said after a pause, "but they stopped winning." Later that morning, just after breakfast, Anne Turner arrived. She didn't wear a lab coat, just jeans and a loose cardigan. She carried a canvas tote and smiled like someone who didn't expect anything in return. "Hi, Lucy," she said, crouching beside the couch. "I'm Anne. Mind if I sit with you?" Lucy shrugged. "Okay." Anne pulled out a box of puzzle pieces and placed them on the rug. No clipboard, no forms. "How do you feel about cats?" she asked. Lucy blinked. "Cats. I've got a puzzle with 3 of them stuck in a laundry basket. But there's a dog outside the door." Drama. Lucy hesitated, then cracked the barest smile. "Cats are smarter." Anne grinned. "That's what I said." They started piecing together the edges, not talking much. Anne worked slowly, always leaving room for Lucy's hands. When a piece didn't fit, she didn't correct her, just waited. "You don't ask a lot of questions," Lucy said after a while. "People ask you too many." Lucy nodded. Anne didn't answer right away. "Sometimes questions are just ways for adults to feel less helpless," she said softly. Across the room, Ethan watched from the hallway, arms crossed, shoulders slightly slumped, the kind of posture that says more than a sigh. Anne noticed him, but didn't call attention. "She doesn't trust easily," Ethan said later as Anne packed her bag. "She shouldn't," Anne replied. "Trust is earned, not owed." "She's different," Ethan said, voice low. Anne paused. "She's not different. She just doesn't have anyone to resemble yet." That night, Lucy closed the curtains, but not all the way. She left a small gap, not enough to escape, just enough to see. When she pulled the blanket to her chin, she reached under the pillow and touched the box. Just the corner. Enough to know it was there. Leave a comment. Carrot, if you are listening to this story in the summer, and if it is cold season, write radish. Downstairs, Ethan stood at the kitchen counter. His phone buzzed. A message from the private investigator. Found the knife. Back garden, buried shallow near the park next the mansion. Stainless. Of course, it had Veronica's and someone else's fingerprints on it. Time-stamped camera footage confirms male suspect entered at 11:42 p.m. Left 12:11 a.m. Face matches the man the girl described. Ethan set the phone down. He didn't say a word, but the hand that had once trembled now curled into a quiet, steady fist. Upstairs, Lucy closed her eyes. The dark no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a blanket someone had tucked around her. The courthouse didn't look how Lucy imagined it would. It was too clean, too bright. The benches didn't creak, and the windows were too high to see the street below. Everything smelled like paper and cold air. Anne sat beside her, thumbing gently at a corner of her scarf. Lucy was in a plain navy dress, the kind that looked too new for her. She kept tugging at the hem like it didn't belong. The old handkerchief in her grip was another story. Frayed, faded. The corners knotted so many times, it looked like it had survived something more important than laundry. She held it like a talisman. At the front of the room, two men in suits leaned close over a leather folder, whispering and glancing back at her every so often. They looked expensive, polished, clean in a way that made Lucy feel like a wrinkle in the room. Ethan sat behind her, Rosa beside him. Neither spoke. Veronica was already there, flanked by her two lawyers, jaw clenched. Her lipstick was gone. Her hands shook, not out of fear, but from something meaner. Her smile came and went like a flickering bulb. The judge, a woman with a voice like broken gravel and hair the color of old tea, called the room to order. Then they said Lucy's name. Anne leaned in. "You don't have to rush. Just speak slow, like you're telling me a story." Lucy stood. The walk to the stand was longer than it should have been. Her shoes made no sound, but she felt loud. She kept her head down. The microphone was too tall. A clerk adjusted it. "Can you tell the court your name, sweetheart?" the judge asked gently. "Lucy Carter," she whispered. "I'm 6, almost 7. A man in a grey suit stood. He didn't smile, didn't soften. "Lucy," he said, "you've told the police that you overheard a conversation. That's right?" She nodded. "Can you tell us when this was?" She hesitated. "The night before the wedding." "And you were... where?" "In the garage." He leaned forward slightly. "Were you supposed to be there?" Lucy looked at Anne, then Ethan. Both nodded once. "No," she said. "But I didn't have anywhere else." A murmur moved through the courtroom like a shiver. The man adjusted his cufflinks. "So you were living in Mr. Grayson's garage, without permission?" "Yes." "Which means, technically, you were trespassing." She blinked. "I guess." "Do you understand what perjury is, Lucy?" "Objection." The judge raised a hand. "Let's keep it clear." The lawyer backed off a half step, smiled without warmth. "Lucy, you're very young. Isn't it possible your memory's a little confused?" Lucy looked down at the handkerchief. Then she pulled something from her pocket, a folded sheet of notebook paper. She handed it to the bailiff. "Can I show this?" It passed hands. Then the judge read it, brow furrowing. "My mom said to keep everything that feels important," Lucy said. "So I did." Ethan sat forward. So did Robert. Anne's fingers curled tighter. "Inside that box," Lucy continued, "there's a paper with her signature. It says, if anything ever happens to her, I should keep listening and write things down." The defense shifted, discomfort breaking through their steel posture. "I didn't know what they meant. Not everything. But I know how people sound when they're lying. And I know when someone says, he'll be gone after the ceremony, they don't mean on vacation." She turned, now fully facing the courtroom. "They said the car was perfect because he loved it. They said the brakes were easy. They said I wasn't supposed to hear." She paused, voice cracking. "But I did." The courtroom was silent. No one moved. Then the prosecutor stood. His tone was different. "Lucy," he said, "did you hear both voices clearly?" "Yes." "Would you recognize them again?" "Yes." "Can you point them out?" She pointed without hesitation. To her. and to the man with the motorcycle. He came through the side gate. I remember the sound it made. The judge called for order. Veronica stood up so suddenly her chair scraped the floor. "This is ridiculous," she said, voice sharp. "She's a homeless child with no proof. She's confused. She's making it up." Robert rose. "She's not," he said. "The garage camera caught you there at midnight. You weren't looking for props." "And the knife," the prosecutor added, "was found buried behind the east hedge. Fingerprints match to a man named Mark Sullivan." The judge looked to Veronica. "Do you have anything to say before I make my ruling?" Veronica opened her mouth. Nothing came. Then, softly, like deflating, "I didn't want to kill him. I just wanted money. We talked about it, that's all." Silence again. The gavel came down. The sentence: 5 years in state prison for conspiracy to commit assault with intent to kill. Mark Sullivan remained at large. Outside, cameras clicked. Lucy gripped Ethan's hand as they exited the building. Reporters shouted questions, mostly at Ethan, some at her. She kept her eyes forward. In the parking lot, Anne knelt beside her. "You did it," she said. "I'm proud of you." Lucy didn't answer. She just looked up at the sky. It was wide and grey and windswept. But for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like it was going to collapse. She took a breath, then another, then held Ethan's hand just a little tighter. The house creaked differently after the trial. Not louder, just changed. Like it had exhaled after holding its breath too long. That night, Lucy didn't speak much during dinner. She picked at the mashed potatoes and only touched the edge of her spoon to the green beans. No one pushed her. Rosa hummed faintly over the stove. Ethan refilled her water without asking. The silence wasn't tense. It was careful, like placing fine glassware back on a shelf. Later, after the dishes were done and the lights were dimmed, Ethan sat just outside her bedroom. He didn't knock, didn't enter, just leaned back against the wall with a paperback in hand. The spine cracked when he opened it. He read softly, not like a bedtime story, but like a conversation he was having with the quiet itself. Lucy didn't fall asleep right away, but she didn't ask him to stop. It became a pattern. Every night, around the same time, he'd sit outside her door, reading aloud until her breathing evened out. Some nights, she dreamed of wind and tall grass, and people who didn't look back when they walked away. But other nights, less now, she dreamed of the Mustang's engine, of screams with no sound. When those dreams came, she'd wake up with a gasp, fingers gripping the blanket, and through the door, she'd hear Ethan's voice, still here, and he was, always. Anne returned that week, not with questions, with crayons. She sat on the rug with Lucy, knees bent, cardigan sleeves pushed up, a big sketch pad between them. She never asked Lucy to speak, just said, "Want to show me how you feel today?" Lucy didn't answer, but she picked up the blue. The drawings came slowly at first, circles, shapes, half-formed rooms. Then people, not faces, just outlines, always alone. Some held umbrellas with no rain, others stood on balconies with no stairs. Anne only said, "That's beautiful," or "Tell me about this one," and waited, never filling the silence unless Lucy asked her to. After a few sessions, Lucy added a second figure to a drawing. Small, in the corner, not touching. Anne noticed, but didn't say a word. On a Thursday afternoon, something changed. They were walking through the garden. Rosa had sent them out with a bag of stale bread to feed the birds, when Lucy reached up and placed her hand on Ethan's wrist. Just for a second. She didn't look at him, didn't explain, but she held on long enough for him to notice, long enough for him to gently adjust his pace so they walked in step. He didn't speak about it. He didn't have to. That night, he sat in the same hallway chair and read until his voice went hoarse. Rosa taught her how to fold towels properly. Not roll, fold, corners aligned, edges neat. She said nothing about order or perfection, only, folding makes things feel held. Lucy didn't speak, but she folded 4 in a row, neatly, slowly. Her sleeves slid down every time, and Rosa kept pushing them up with a quiet grin. They made cookies too, the kind that come out wrong if you rush the butter. Lucy stirred with both hands. Rosa added cinnamon by feel. Later, Lucy licked the spoon. Rosa winked but didn't scold. "Not bad," Lucy said under her breath. Rosa froze, then smiled. "First words all day," she said, pretending not to notice the heat rushing to Lucy's ears. School started again on Monday. Ethan drove her, silent the whole way. His hands gripped the wheel tighter than usual. Lucy wore a second-hand backpack and the sweater Rosa had knit in 2 nights flat. In class, Miss Linda, round glasses, velvet voice, gently guided Lucy to a seat near the front. "You don't have to answer," she said, "but you can always ask." Mr. Warren, tall and soft-spoken, dropped a new notebook on Lucy's desk when she wasn't looking. The corner had a yellow sticker, smiley face. Lucy ran her fingers over the edge for a full minute before opening it. She didn't write anything the first day, but she drew a small tree in the back corner, just the outline. On the 3rd day, a folded piece of paper appeared in her locker. No name. She opened it at recess. It was shaped like a paper airplane, crooked at the wings. Inside, big, messy handwriting. "I don't fly too good, but you can hold me steady if you want. Eliza." Lucy blinked, smiled, then folded it again. Carefully. She didn't throw it. She placed it in the back pocket of her backpack, next to the handkerchief, the only thing she didn't let anyone else touch. That night, the nightmares didn't come. Instead, she dreamed of the garden, of folded towels on the porch railing, cookies cooling on the windowsill, and Ethan's voice reading about a fox in the snow who found his way home just by walking, step after step, even when he didn't know where he was going. When she woke, she didn't reach for the blanket first. She reached under her pillow, found the corner of the old box, touched it once, then let go. The storm didn't announce itself the way summer ones did. It came in low and thick, like a secret crawling under the floorboards. By twilight, the wind had grown teeth, and the trees along the back fence bent not like dancers, but like men pleading. Ethan stood at the hallway window, one hand resting on the frame, his eyes scanning the side garden where Benny had trimmed the hedges too neatly just that morning. There was something clinical about the way the shrubs stood now, too clean, too obedient. Rosa had mentioned it, in passing, while drying forks. "Doesn't leave any place for birds," she'd muttered. Ethan hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now, the order in the garden made his skin itch. Upstairs, Lucy sat at her desk with the sketch pad Anne had left behind. The pages fluttered from the breeze, sneaking in through the cracked window. She drew in charcoal that night, nothing colourful. A stairwell descending into black, a girl at the top, her feet uncertain. No hands waited at the bottom. She paused, sniffed the air. It smelled wrong. There was something burnt in the wind, metallic, bitter, like the tang of old matches or the leftover stink of fireworks. It pulled her away from the page before she even knew she was afraid. She crept to the door, opened it just wide enough to peer out. Downstairs, Rosa was folding dish towels with the radio on low. Ethan passed behind her with a flashlight in hand. "I think the outside motion light's busted," he said, voice clipped. "I'll check the breaker." "I told Benny about that this morning," Rosa said. "He said he'd take care of it. I'll double check." Ethan grabbed his coat and went toward the back door. Lucy felt her chest go tight. She didn't know what it was yet, but the tension in the air wasn't hers alone. She slipped from her room, quiet as the night, and padded, barefoot, to the stair rail. 1 floor below, the front door clicked, twice. Then silence. She strained her ears, then heard it. A scuff, not from the front walk, from the east wing hallway, where no one ever walked after dark. She turned, heart thudding. There. Faint. A second scuff, something metallic rattling gently, and beneath it all, the unmistakable smell of gunpowder. Lucy turned on instinct. She moved fast, but silent, down the hall, past the linen closet, past the reading chair where Ethan usually waited with a book. He wasn't there. She slid down the banister's shadow, reached the basement door, and listened. Footsteps. Slow, measured. Not Rose's, not Ethan's, not Benny's either. Then a voice, too low to understand, but thick with intent. She turned the handle, slipped inside. The door shut behind her with a click that echoed louder than thunder. She ran down the stairs, 2 at a time, didn't stop until she reached the far wall. The hidden latch was behind the bookcase. She yanked it sideways, revealing the narrow passage Ethan had shown her once, months ago, when he talked about his late wife and her fear of storms. This was her idea, he'd said. She always needed to know there was somewhere safe to go. Lucy ducked inside. Her hands clutched the box before her brain realized it. The cardboard was soft around the edges now. The ink on the label faded, but it was whole. It had survived everything. So had she. Behind her, the wall sealed with a soft thud. And then darkness. Not the thick, gasping dark of the garage. This was cleaner, controlled, the kind built for hiding, not punishment. In the silence, her heartbeat filled the room. Above, the chaos broke loose. Glass shattered. Someone shouted. Heavy boots pounded against tile. Then, the high-pitched whine of the house alarm, tripped by motion, screamed through the walls. Lucy didn't move. She pressed her back against the wall, tucked the box under her chin, and waited. Somewhere outside the hidden door, Ethan called her name. She heard it, distant but alive. Then other voices. Not Ethan, not friendly. She couldn't make out the words, but the cadence was wrong. Aggressive. Searching. "Where is it?" a voice snarled. "Shut up and check upstairs," another snapped. Then, the unmistakable thud of something falling. Rosa. Lucy pressed her palm against the wall, eyes wide in the dark. But then, sirens. Not in the dream kind of way. Real, rising, racing. The voices shifted, scrambled, one of them cursed loud. A door slammed, a window cracked, and then a bang. Not a door this time. Gunfire. Lucy pulled the box closer, the smell of the cardboard grounding her more than breath. A second bang, then boots running, furniture crashing, and just as suddenly, silence. It stretched, brittle and unbearable, like a string pulled too tight. Then, a voice. "Ethan." "Lucy, it's me. It's over." Still, she didn't move. She waited. Footsteps approached. A hand turned the hidden latch. Light flooded in, soft and yellow, not harsh like the flashlights of the intruders. Ethan's face appeared in the opening, pale, eyes wide but kind. He didn't speak. Just knelt, held out both arms. Lucy stepped into them, the box still clutched to her chest. Behind Ethan, the hall was filled with police lights. Detective Harris stood near the broken French doors, coat drenched, radio in one hand, pistol holstered. One officer led a cuffed man out the front, Mark Sullivan. His jaw was bloodied, his eyes wild. He didn't look at Lucy, didn't even glance her way. But Ethan did. He scooped her up, carefully, like something precious, not fragile, and carried her past the damage, the overturned chairs, the muddy footprints on the stairs, the crack in the old portrait. Rosa sat wrapped in a blanket near the fireplace, a cut on her forehead, hands steady around a mug of tea. She reached out as they passed, brushing Lucy's foot with her fingertips. "You're safe now," she whispered. Lucy didn't answer. She didn't need to. She was still holding the box, not to shield herself, not anymore, but to remember. That darkness came, and she stayed standing. That night, the rain didn't stop, but neither did the light in Lucy's room. Ethan left the door ajar, and Lucy, curled beneath the quilt, stared at the ceiling as the wind sang its old, haunting lullaby. This time, she wasn't afraid. The shadows had come, and this time, she hadn't been alone. The morning was strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful, but expectant. Rosa set warm toast on the table with apple butter, humming softly, as if trying not to disturb the weight that had settled in the house. Lucy stared at her plate, but didn't eat. Her dress was ironed, her hair gently brushed back by Rosa an hour earlier, but her eyes didn't quite land anywhere. Not on the toast, not on the windows, not even on Ethan, who sat across from her in a neatly pressed grey shirt, looking like he hadn't exhaled since he got out of bed. Today was the day. The day Ethan would ask the court to make Lucy his daughter. Neither of them spoke about it on the drive. The radio stayed off. Ethan's fingers gripped the wheel tighter than usual. Lucy's hands folded in her lap like she was holding something invisible together. The courthouse was small, built beside a park that hadn't seen new playground equipment in years. The waiting area had blue-cushioned benches and framed finger paintings on the walls. But to Lucy, it still felt colder than any night she'd spent in the garage. They were called into the courtroom by a soft-voiced clerk. The judge, Lisa McCarthy, sat behind a wide wooden bench. Her robe was dark, her hair tied in a careful bun, and her eyes sharp but not unkind. She flipped through the files slowly, as if she wasn't just reading paperwork, but reading someone's life. "Mr. Ethan Grayson," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Do you understand the legal and emotional implications of petitioning to adopt this child?" Ethan stood. "I do." "And you're prepared to take on full guardianship, financial, medical, and emotional responsibility?" "Yes, ma'am, I am." Lucy's small hand tightened around his. Then came the testimonies. Miriam and Paul, the social workers, described Lucy's progress over the past 3 months, how she no longer flinched at sudden noises, how she laughed, softly, during art class, how she asked for seconds at dinner. "She doesn't just feel safe," Miriam said. "She feels like she belongs." Miss Linda, Lucy's teacher, read a letter aloud. "She looks people in the eyes now. She sings during group time. And just last week, she volunteered to feed the class hamster without being asked. She's still learning how to be a child, but she's learning." Then came a folded paper, written in purple crayon by Eliza, Lucy's classmate. "She smiles more now. She even laughed when I accidentally dropped my juice box on her book. I think she's starting to believe this place wants her to stay." The judge nodded. "Thank you." Then she looked to Ethan. "Would you like to speak?" Ethan rose again. His voice was low, but steady. "I once lost someone I loved. I thought that kind of love only came once in a life. That if I ever opened my heart again, it would betray the memory of who I lost." He glanced at Lucy, who looked up at him. "But I was wrong. Love doesn't erase. It adds." And when I found Lucy, when I learned she had been living in my garage for 2 years, I didn't just feel guilt. I felt something shift, something open. He paused. "She's not a replacement. She's not a responsibility. She's Lucy, brave, quiet, smarter than most adults I know. She's already family in every way that counts. I just want the law to catch up with what our hearts already know." The courtroom went quiet. No one moved. No one breathed too loud. Then Judge McCarthy leaned forward and said, "This court hereby grants the petition for adoption. Effective immediately, Lucy Carter is the legal daughter of Mr. Ethan Grayson." Lucy covered her face with both hands, shoulders trembling. She wasn't sobbing, not loudly, just shaking with the kind of relief that only comes after holding yourself together too long. Then she looked up, eyes glistening. "Can I call you Dad now?" she whispered. Ethan didn't answer with words. He just knelt down, opened his arms, and lifted her into the air like she was light enough to carry forever. Like he'd been waiting his whole life to do exactly that. Lucy clung to his shoulders, her old handkerchief slipping from her pocket like a ribbon finally let go. And for once, she wasn't holding it because she was afraid. She didn't need to anymore. She had a home now. She had a name to call her own, and a father who would never let her go. The morning started without alarm clocks or rushing footsteps, only the gentle creak of wood and the smell of cinnamon from downstairs. The sky was brushed with soft grey, and the garden still carried last night's rain like a memory in its leaves. Lucy sat at the kitchen table, with her legs tucked beneath her, sipping warm milk as Ethan read over a half-crumpled blueprint, drawn in marker and child-sized sketches. "This one's a ladder," Lucy said, pointing at the tangled lines beside the tree's trunk. "But not too tall, okay?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Short ladder. Got it. And this?" "A trap door. For secrets." She grinned. "And maybe a basket to send snacks up. I can't believe I didn't think of that first." In the yard, the oak tree waited. Old, wide, dependable. Ethan had checked the branches the week before, testing weight and reach. Rosa, watching from the window, had said softly, "It's time." Not about the tree. Not really. They started after breakfast. Ethan brought out the wood, pieces collected from the shed, and an old porch swing he never rebuilt. Lucy followed with rope and her sketch pad under one arm. She wore mismatched gloves and Ethan's extra tool belt, which sagged down her waist like a skirt. At first, progress was slow. Ethan measured too carefully. Lucy hammered with the stubborn certainty of a child who'd never held a nail straight in her life, and the wind kept stealing the plans. "You bent that one," Ethan said, holding up a nail shaped like a fishhook. "I bent 3, but that one's special." "Oh? What's its job?" "Guarding the snack basket." Laughter echoed through the yard. By midday, they had a basic platform, a rope tossed over the lowest branch, and enough scratches between them to look like they'd fought a very enthusiastic raccoon. Rosa brought out lemonade and Band-Aids shaped like ducks. "Hydration first, dignity later," she said, passing Ethan the jug. Lucy drank 3 glasses before she remembered to breathe. In the late afternoon, Eliza biked over with a crooked wooden sign painted in shaky letters, "Grayson Treehouse." She handed it to Lucy, without a word, and stood there, waiting. Lucy beamed. "Can you help us hang it?" Eliza nodded and tossed her backpack down like it was filled with bricks she didn't need anymore. "I brought string and also glitter, because no one said it couldn't sparkle." Ethan looked alarmed. "Is that allowed?" Lucy held up the glitter like a crown. "We're the builders. We make the rules." So they glittered the sign, splashed paint on the ladder steps, and sang a song Rosa made up on the spot. Something about nails and cookies and how every good treehouse needs its own anthem. By early evening, the structure stood tall and wobbly, but full of pride. A small platform with guardrails made of old curtain rods, a trap door held shut by a twist of coat hanger, and inside, 2 small windows made of recycled picture frames. Lucy hung up her drawing last. A picture of the Mustang, not as it looked in the garage, but out on an open road, under a clear blue sky. Inside the car, two people sat side by side, hands on the wheel, smiling. One small, one grown. Both driving. No one said a word when she pinned it to the inside wall of the treehouse. Ethan only crouched beside her and said, "Think it's roadworthy?" "It flies," she whispered. Dinner was set outside, a folding table, paper plates, and mismatched silverware. Rosa brought out spaghetti and warm apple pie, and Eliza's mum sent over garlic bread for extra strength, as she called it. They sat on cushions, under string lights Ethan had wrestled from the garage rafters. It wasn't fancy, but Lucy twirled her noodles like royalty and declared, "This is the best dinner I've ever had in my life." Rosa put a hand to her heart. "Even better than pizza night?" Lucy nodded. "Pizza doesn't come with stars." Eliza leaned over. "Or a trap door." Ethan smiled into his napkin. The night settled like a blanket. They cleaned up together. Eliza left with a glittery handshake and a whispered, "See you at recess." Rosa hummed as she swept the crumbs. Ethan climbed the ladder one last time to check the support beams. Lucy stood below, arms crossed. "I trust it, just not you on it." I'll have you know I was very agile in college. Before electricity, he almost dropped the flashlight. When everything was done and the garden was quiet again, Lucy carried a lantern up the treehouse ladder by herself. She sat in the middle, legs crossed, holding her box close. She didn't open it, just kept it in her lap, like a heartbeat she knew by memory. Ethan watched from below, hands in his pockets. "You all right?" he called softly. A pause. "Yeah." He didn't climb up, just stood there, eyes turned to the sky. Stars were beginning to poke through the dusk, small at first, then braver. Lucy leaned against the wall, the box beside her, her feet swinging gently. "Dad?" she said, barely above a whisper. He looked up. "Yeah, baby. We're a family now, right?" Ethan's breath caught. He nodded once, slow, eyes full. "You've been my family for a long time, Lucy. You just didn't know it yet." The lantern flickered softly, the wind rustled through the glittery sign, and Lucy closed her eyes, letting the weight in her chest dissolve into something new, something warm, something called home. There are children like Lucy, who grew up in silence and darkness, not because of guilt, but because of being forgotten. And there are also people like Ethan, who thought their hearts were closed forever, until a small hand suddenly reached out. This story is not about blood, but about choice. Choosing to see, choosing to trust, choosing to love someone, not because they belong to you, but because they deserve to belong. Have you ever encountered someone like Lucy in your life? An evasive look, a long silence, a fragile signal that the person is just waiting for someone to stop and listen? If so, would you be patient enough to sit next to them like Ethan did, saying nothing, just to let them know, "I'm still here"? How was your day? Eat something delicious and get a good night's sleep. Thank you for staying with us until the end. See you in the next stories.